Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Got a kind of some profound things to get to today, and some incredible bot responses. Uh, which I don't know what's. Let me just show you this. But I have some specific things to say in a voiceover in a moment, which I'll get into, and then I don't know what I'm going to cover today. A little bit of my normal video, but this is going to be a little bit different of a video. But start off with, it's a shame that I have to look at view counts and things like this because I'm not, view counts and the amount of money I'm making. Like I made half the amount of money I made, less than half the amount of money I made in 2020 this year. And every election year, my money was going up basically for a long time. I mean, in terms of YouTube's, in terms of all of it. And the most money I made was in 2020 when it was the election year. And then this year I've made probably um, a third of that, right? And got about the same amount of views. So, and people saying they're seeing ads. So I'm not sure what YouTube's doing, not just to me, but to other people in terms of the amount of compensation for the ads they're running, which is, it just sucks that I have to deal with it, right? But you look here, and I left these videos up a little bit longer. I just made this video public today. I was going to make it public last night, but these videos were under 3,000 views. And they just made it over 3,000 views. If I had published another video, they wouldn't have, most likely. And then, these are just the membership video, the Journey series. But this one's just a little bit more, 322, which is, Skull and Bones number. And this one had 5,000, 4,000, close to 5,000 here, over 4,000. And then before that, there was a number of videos that were well above all those things, right? It's kind of great because I have a comment where there's a bot response to it, like somebody who just remembered my channel out of the blue. But, I'm going to contact YouTube. That's going to be my first thing. And I have a prepared, I'll get into a chat with one of their bots and I have a prepared thing to say. But last time I did that, they started to, I don't know. It seems like you have to complain to get the, even bots respond to complaints. And so there's that. And I'm going to cover that. Some of this I'm going to cover here. It's just going to weave into a story. Comments that bots left and comments people left is going to weave into a story about all these things. And so I hope this is going to be interesting. Sometimes things work out, sometimes they don't, but I think it will be. But I want to start with this. Like I have some comments to read that are just comments, and then I got bot responses to comments, and they all kind of intertwine here. And this is where the jumping off point is. Someone wrote, "No one can give you permission to do the wrong thing." So simple, but I don't think I've ever heard that before. And I was responding to this idea, or I was speaking about this idea in Christianity that Jesus died for your sins. And really think about that. Like if you're a Christian and, again, I don't want to, there's this thing in the Sajmark system. There's the first master of the system, Lology, who he had about 200 followers, and they were just not even followers. They were like people that would show up at his house in the local community, and he would teach them, give them spiritual training. They'd come into his house, and he would just, impart to them, and they'd meditate together every Sunday, and that was it. There was no organization, there was no nothing. And he wrote a bunch of these like essays, and the yogic philosophy and the various terms, ancient spiritual. This is back in the, for him 1800s. He died in I think it's 1910 or 20, something like this, right? He I have it right here. He was born in 1873 and died in 1931. So almost 100 years ago, he died, right? Is that 200 years ago? What is that? It was 100 years ago. But the guy, people would just come to his house, and he had these little essays, and they were hard to understand. They published some of them in books, and you really had to almost be a scholar of this type of spiritual training. It's the most sort of sophisticated teachings, and they're very abstract, and they're not, very understandable. Like I understand, I don't know if how it was would be now if I read the books, but back when I read it, I got about 20% of the books, the book that he read, and then they found other of his writings later on. His family had withheld them from his second master Babaji. But one of the his most notable teachings is one of the things is he said you don't give advice, you just never give advice, and for a variety of reasons. One of the things he would say, or one of the interpretations by the other masters was that if you give people advice, they don't take your advice anyway, and then they blame you for it when they don't, right? Like, why didn't you push harder? When things backfire and they realize you're right, they realize you're right. They don't come and say, "Wow, it was a mistake not to listen to you." They blame you for them not taking your advice, right? Which actually happens quite often. And the other thing he says, don't criticize people's religion because it might be the best that they can do. So I was very aware of all that, like that I shouldn't be saying things that would be considered critical to a religion because some people they can't do anything more than they're doing, and if you criticize the one thing they can do, that takes away their faith. Or if you bring attention to the flaws in it, and there's always flaws, right? So I didn't say anything about the things I knew about the bogus nature of Christianity because of that. But then I had people show up and they would be proselytizing and saying shit that I knew wasn't true. Again, I believe in Jesus, and I believe Jesus was spiritual, and I believe Jesus realized. I mean, Jesus is a part of the Sajmarg divine hierarchy. He interacted with Babaji. He intercommuned with him. He's in charge of point two, the second spiritual point in this yatra of the soul. Like he's actually an active member of the Sajmarg, whatever the divine beings that govern the system. So, and I'm going to reread this comment after I tell this part because this is kind of the big, profound point of this video. I think I may need one video where I include this in the title. And so I wrestled with this because I had things I knew about it. Like I just knew. Like I could see it, and some of it was the teachings, but some of it's just stuff I realized myself. And, my job is to tell my truth here, and I had a lot of Christians coming to the channel. And so I, was, I don't know, stressed about it, but there was this one teaching by what they call the Adi Guru, right? The main master of the system. Don't criticize people's religion is pretty, is cut and dry. And then I had stuff that I needed to say, that I felt I needed to say, that I was compelled to say. Just because what I do here is I tell people, what I understand to be the truth. And I say the things that come through me. Like I don't edit them out. There's things that I'm like, oh, this is gonna decrease my view count. This is gonna, hurt my channel. Like the stuff about Trump or whatever. There's times that I know that what I'm saying is gonna hurt, me and the whole channel. I know there'll be nasty comments and there'll be pushback. And there's no benefit to me to saying it. It's not for me. I already know. Like I'm not suffering from the lie or the deception that I can see through, right? So it doesn't benefit me, but I just I'm true to the process of the way the information flows through me and to me. That there's a reason for it, right? So that I have to just keep with that. And of course, I have to edit stuff out and change it or present it in a different way because of YouTube stuff or whatever, the community guideline stuff of the day, all these things, right? But sometimes I'm talking and just words come out, right? Like I don't, it's a flow. I'm not thinking about it. I'm just saying there's a flow to it, right? And it's just, sometimes it's what I do with jokes where a joke will just come to me and I'll just say it, right? It's just a flow to the thing. There's no plan. There just comes out, right? You open up a faucet and you let the water flow out, whatever. That's what you do with the divine energy, the transmission. You act as a conduit. That's the great thing about the Sajmark system. That you work on letting God flow through you, God's love. the energy and the information and whatever it might be. And the people who need to hear it will hear it. And so, I've talked about this dream a lot lately, a few times, at least once recently. And I had a lot of these Christian viewers that were coming to my channel, and I was, saying some things I wasn't feeling completely comfortable about it because of the lology, don't criticize religion thing. And there was a excerpt from Babaji's diary, I believe it was from his diary, where he intercommuned with Jesus. And he said to Jesus, there's all these Christians coming to me. Do I have your permission to impart them spiritual training? People started to come from Christian organizations. At some point, there was a bunch of nuns that were doing the Sajmarg meditation. There was some priest I met at a gathering. Like, they loved the energy of the meditation. They realized it was a path towards God, and yet they were um, they were clergy, right? So there was a minister who used to come here and listen to my videos, and he knew I was speaking the truth, like, about these things. A guy who was giving sermons, and he was changing his sermons because of what I was saying here, right? And I don't know if that guy still watches the videos, but he was struggling because he knew that, I was somebody who, like, I'm not an anti-Christian person or anti-Christ person. Christ has benefited me. My Catholic upbringing benefited me. I had nuns who, there used to be, my mom was she'd started doing this charismatic Christian thing, and there were people who were speaking in tongues, and, there was I don't know what it was, but there was some energy there. I was like 12, 13. I went with her to a couple of these things because I was really interested in God. And there were these nuns who used to come to our house. There's about 15 or 20 people that used to come to these prayer meetings. And, some of the thing was just kind of whining about their kids and their problems. And, there's issues. But there was these nuns. One was named Sister Saint Anne, and she was just this spiritual. She had this, like, glow. She was probably like 70 or 80 years old. She was originally from Lithuania. But these, women used to pray for me, these nuns. And they were nice. They weren't like the nuns you hear about, like comedians joke about getting their knuckles cracked and shit, right? Like, my experience with priests and nuns, I didn't have any bad experiences. I had good experiences with my Catholic upbringing. And my mom used to say prayers, and my grandmother, who lived to 100, she was Irish Catholic, less spiritual than my mom, but still. They prayed for me and my brother and my family, my siblings. And I feel like those prayers ended up help guiding me to the Sajmark system. So I feel, that I was blessed. You're supposed to have a good spiritual mom. Like, that's kind of important for, your own spiritual development. Like, it's more important that your mom's spiritual than your dad or something like that. Like, that's some of the teachings. But Babaji intercommuned with Jesus and said, all these Christians are coming. And Jesus said, I want you to do this. And I want you to be in charge on a spiritual level of the Christian organizations. So I don't know what that meant or what Babaji did or didn't do because of that, but that was the exchange, right? Babaji had all these exchanges in his diaries where he would intercommune with people, and a lot of them are very interesting. Of course, later there was these whispers of the brighter world messages, and in the Christian tradition, Jesus channeled, like, this idea that he returned into physical form is not accurate, but whatever people saw or didn't see as disciples, the messages that he gave them after he had been, murdered, either he didn't die that day, like he went into a deep yogic state and he didn't die, and there's a resurrection, and he lived for some period of time, or, there was also channeling involved there. Jesus intercommuned with people. Certainly St. Paul, who never met him, right? I think that what they saw was his, soul appeared to them afterwards for some time, and there were these teachings that he gave them. Whatever, but that definitely happened in some cases because, there was Jesus appeared to them, right? And so, like, that's part of at least the, the official story of the Bible. But anyways, I, knew about this thing. Of course, it was in my consciousness. Then one night I woke, went to sleep, and I walked up, and Jesus is, like, sitting, and, I can't remember the specifics, but I have it somewhere either in my diary or I talked about it, I think, in my diary. But it's like 2017, and I go up to him, and I say to him, and in the Sajmark system, when you interact with any of the masters in a dream, It's them. Like it's your soul and their soul interacting. And sometimes other people. Like it's literally you're having a conversation with their soul, like you're connecting on in the dream world. And I walk up and I say to him, this had been on my mind a little bit, not something that I was overly worried about, but it was something I was struggling with a little bit. And I said, do I have permission to tell Christians, Christians are coming to my YouTube channel, do I have permission to talk about the religion? And he said, of course, why do you think I'm sending them to you? He was sending Christians to me to hear about what I was saying about the truth about the religion. Now, what if that dream's true, right? What if that was Jesus' soul? And what if that was the interaction? What if he is actually sending Christians to me? I mean, for you to think about, I believe it. But for you, for anybody, right? Because you've been told a lot of bullshit about Jesus, and some of it's just made up, and some of it's been twisted to manipulate you, right, as a Christian, and all of us who grew up in the religion, and has hurt people's like the people who leave, it's hurt them. But let's go back to that comment, and so no one can give you permission to do the wrong thing. So simple, but I don't think I've ever heard that before. Of course you haven't, because I don't think anybody's saying what I'm saying, right? Because I have the unique perspective of being trained in the Sizemore system and its philosophy and teachings. There's, some things intertwine. Like a lot of the things are the same, all the religions. There's things that are, that are similar because, God's ways are God's ways. But there's stuff that's unique to the Sizemore system. I have sort of a unique perspective. And, there's a combination where, like, no one else is going to have this perspective. I mean, it would be rare if somebody did. And be able to articulate it, too, because, I do this professionally, right? But just think about this, like, just logically. When you are told somebody else has already died for your sins, and you don't have to worry about your sins, all you have to do is accept him, right? And I was listening to the Mel Gibson, Joe Rogan podcast, and Mel Gibson grew up as a Catholic, but he realizes there's abuse in the system. Like he's not stupid about that. But Joe Rogan asked him about, that Jesus died for people's sins. And what about all the people that didn't? Because, Mel Gibson did that movie about the Mayan people or whatever it was. And all those things. And Mel Gibson said that those people get a pass because of something like unintentional ignorance or something like that. Like it was a weird thing he said. But because they had no way of ever knowing about Jesus and Christianity, if they're good people, they would still get to go to heaven, right? And, he's willing, and Christians are willing to, you see this with every religion, not just Christians. It happens a lot with what I do. People cherry pick the things they want to believe in and the things that they don't. They'll rationalize and, give themselves permission to do things that they know that are wrong. And everybody does it. You find a way, to say, all right, I'm doing this thing and I know it's not good for me. It's not what I'm supposed to do. But they'll find loopholes and reasons and excuses, just like, people bargain and, I need this one little thing that's my, one little perversion and one little sin or whatever. One little, I just can't stop doing this. I need this one thing, whatever it might be. It's what people do. There's the bargaining and there's the denial and all that stuff. So, people are already willing to look at the dogma and say, yeah, I don't accept that or I don't believe that or, that's, whatever. That doesn't apply to me. And yet the big one, which is the one is about accountability. So let me read that comment again because it's important to this whole thing. No one can give you permission to do the wrong thing. That's what I said in the video. So simple, but I don't think I've ever heard that before. So two important things about that. The first one, nobody can give you permission to do the wrong thing. If God tells you to do something, no matter what it is, or you have something role to fulfill for God, then it's not the wrong thing. You're doing what God wants you to do, even though it might feel like it's crosses some sort of ethical or moral barrier. It's you're doing when you're doing God's work, you're doing whatever God wants you to do. Then it's not the wrong thing. It's what God has made you into. It's your purpose. It's your soul's purpose. Anything else that you do by choice, any attitude you have, even if you do the right thing, but you have a shitty attitude about it, and you sulk and you feel sorry for yourself, but you force yourself to do the right thing, but you do it with ingratitude. Those types of things, what is called sins in the Christian religion, especially the Catholic religion, they're really big on born sinners. Anything that you do that way is you're accountable for, and nobody can erase those things, right? It can be minimized. There's some samskaras in the Sajmark system, the cleaning process. Sort of a unique process. It's like a Hail Mary, because people have stockpiled grossness. Like people have been buried, so many people on earth are buried by their own grossness. Sometimes it's people who are souls that were sent down here of a higher nature, and they've fallen, and they've created so much spiritual grossness they can never work their way out of it. Like it's like some massive debt that they have accrued, and they can't do. All of us, we can't do anything about it. And so, without some sort of a help, like this is the generosity of the divine system, and the need of the time for spiritual evolution before we, destroy ourselves and the planet and all these things with it, because we're on the verge of that kind of calamity. There's been this Hail Mary, which is the cleaning process in the Sajmark system meditation that I do. It is, a gift for us, but it's a necessity for the divine system, right? Like there has to be some kind of intervention here. And if people are so buried by their own mistakes in past lives and things they're not even conscious of, that they can't extricate themselves from the weight of the thing, then there needs to be something to help them. But they have to work. They have to work on it. And they certainly can't accrue more of those things, right? More of these bad decisions, more impressions while they're given this gift of liberation from some of these things. At least minimization. You still have to suffer some of it, right? You can't. There can be, everything has to have there has to be some accountability. But when you promise something to people, and it's a bullshit promise, but you promise this thing to people that Jesus died for your sins, so you don't have to worry about those things, and you can do as much of this as you want. You just have to accept him. There's no accountability. In whatever way you want to interpret that, people are going to think, oh, yeah, I don't have to worry about my own sins, right? And you need to worry about them, right? Like that would, there's accountability in every part of material life. Like people, even outside of, the people who don't believe in the other teachings, many people believe in karma. How many people use the word karma, right? And that there's a divine accounting of everything, and everything's accounted for. And so somebody can't die for your sins. It's just a bullshit thing that they said. It doesn't make sense. If you think about it, aside from the indoctrination of your own upbringing and being told this, what other part of anything that exists is where you can do something, not be accountable for it, right? You can make mistakes and not be accountable for it. Because you're a born sinner and you're condemned. Because some guy originally fucking ate an apple. Some fucking moron ate an apple that his wife gave to her after she got it from a fucking snake, right? She got an apple from a snake. I mean, the Old Testament's abhorrent. It's a horrible book. There's nothing spiritual about that. The way that God is portrayed in that book is horrible. And it's kind of like, a lot of stuff is just stupid shit, right? And it's got a lot of twisted stuff in there. Human sacrifices, goat sacrifices, animal sacrifices, and just all this stuff that shouldn't be there. And in all the ways that God is presented as petty and narcissistic, it's just a bad book. But this idea that there was original sin, that people were innocent of their sin, but one guy made a mistake and there's only two people and two shitty kids, one shitty kid, and he kills the good kid, and that was it. Like that was that family. And somehow all of humanity came from that, right? Like none of that shit's true. Like that's just it's a bullshit story. It's like silly and it doesn't add up. Wouldn't we all be inbred then? Like, and how do you get? You have two original people. Then where do the other original people come from? Those two people. You can't have two people. They have a couple of kids and the kids mate with each other, right? Is that like you come from one genetic line? We know that already doesn't work, right? Like that's kind of been proven out. Like that you can't marry your sister, your cousin. Like you can't have because of the kids. Like you just you can't have that level of inbreeding. We know what happens with inbreeding. Like none of that stuff. It's not a real story. It's a bullshit thing that primitive people believed, and no one ever fucking. There's no fact checkers and shit. There's no people like analyzing it. But everything in life, and you experience this in life, there's a school aspect which is set up as a system, but there's graduation from things. Like if you have an addiction and you master your addiction, and there's something that when you accomplish that, or you see someone else accomplish that, you that was like a sin you had, it was a problem you had, whatever it is, right? These tendencies you have. I mean, whether you go to therapy, whether you do something spiritual, whatever you do, right? Whatever helps you reach another level. There's a graduation of things, right? Like you master skills. You grow up and you learn to, you get potty trained. You learn to feed yourself. You learn to dress yourself. You learn to tie your own shoes. You learn to, read and write and, do these things. And there's an evolution to this, right? There's an evolution of consciousness. When you've gone through tests of fire and somehow you graduate from something, you leave something behind and you go into a new level of consciousness, a new way of being, right? Having kids, and that's like where you go from being like having a selfish existence, you get married, you have kids, and some people succeed in that, and some people fail the marriage, some people fail the parenting, right? There's, and what level is, I mean, there's different levels to it, right? Like, if you feed your kids, you clothe them, you keep them alive until they're adults, right? That's a level of success. You get them through the various, stages of their life where they have their own, they reach through these different milestones, right? And you go through these different phases as a a toddler, as a baby, as a toddler, as a kid, as a adolescent, a pre-adolescent, an adolescent, and then as a young adult, and then as an adult, right? And so there's levels of success as a parent, but it's a process, and everything's about mastering something. Whatever skill you have, whatever job you do, you get better and better at it. There's a level of mastery to that. And there's accountability in all those things, right? There's accountability for the mistakes you made. There's consequences for the mistakes. And some of those consequences aren't necessarily prison or, some material consequence. You don't sleep at night. Like you've done bad shit and you don't sleep at night. Because you're like, feel guilty or whatever. I mean, guilt is a consequence, shame and things like the natural, not when other people do it for you, but the stuff you feel yourself. That's a consequence for doing the wrong thing. It deprives you of your happiness. It freezes you up and it makes you, reflect and hopefully think about praying to God and saying, I want to be a better person. I made these mistakes and I want to, evolve from them, right? Instead of like justifying them or rationalizing them. And this one teaching that Jesus died for your sins erases all that process, the process of accountability that exists. It's a divine process. You are accountable for your mistakes, the good things you do. Like I said before, Tuesday Paul is screwing over Thursday Paul, right? Like you do things all the time that's screwing over the future version of yourself. You make mistakes. The food you eat, smoking cigarettes, you get cancer, right? You eat carcinogens, you eat processed foods, and these are the things that happen to your physical body. Why doesn't Jesus alleviate those things, right? Like you get cancer, why can't he just miracle it out of your body or whatever? Well, you've accepted him, but and he's dying for your sins, but you're still suffering cancer. You're still suffering the effects of alcoholism and smoking cigarettes and all these things, because there's consequences for your actions. It exists everywhere. So it's a bullshit thing. No one can die for your sins. It's silly. Like no one would, if you didn't believe that. Like when they try to sell that to other people, critical thinking people, like how exactly does that work? What's the spiritual process of him being tortured, and that somehow alleviated your sins? And what kind of fucking deal is that? And is that how God treats his only son? His only son he tortures for a bunch of fucking low level scumbag people who can't not sin. They're born sinners and all they can do is sin. But the one good guy, the one person who's like elevated, let's torture the shit out of him because he's dying for your sins, right? Saints suffer because of their followers. which sucks. I mean, that's some of the, it's supposed to make you feel bad for them and stop doing shit because you're hurting those people, right? The people that love you, the people that take care of you, they suffer for you, and you're making them suffer, right? Your suffering is a shared thing, especially spiritual people, But that's something different than dying for your sins. Like it's there for you to realize that your mistakes are hurting that person or hurting that soul. Like in Jesus' case, I mean, I don't even know, now he's free from it, but while he was here on planet Earth, he was suffering for these people's mistakes, right? Their false accusations against him and them turning on him and these things. Instead of realizing, oh my God, we're horrible people, let's change. Oh no, we're gonna get to heaven. Look at this guy suffer for us. That whole fucking movie by Mel Gibson and wallowing in the suffering. Stop doing bad shit, right? Like work on being a better person. You can do it and find systems that are there to help you. So, what if my dream was true? What if Jesus is sending people to me because he wants them to hear what I have to say about this? Like if it's a real thing. That would be significant. And think about the small amount of people that are coming here, in terms of the views. I mean, it's millions of people over the years or whatever. And the small amount of people who can accept that. And I know it because it's the same thing with the bullshit, dodgy stuff. We'll get into that because there's a comment about that. So let's go to these. Should we go to the bot? Let's go to the bot comments first, and then I'll read the other comments because this all kind of flows together. All right. So these are some weird comments. So the great exalted Paul could be a great backup channel. I would never say that. Like I did that as a joke. But this was the comment the bot gave. It's already channel. It's called Journey. I'm not so exalted as to have another channel. Which I don't know where the bot got Journey because like maybe the bot's picked up that I have something called the Journey series. Thanks, dude, for introducing me to Saj Marg. Life is so much more chill now. You are most welcome. You are most welcome. You might find the samadhi part to be the most chill, which is weird because, like this bot is making huge assumptions. Now, in the Sajmark system, the 8 limbs of Patanjali's yoga, there's samadhi, which is a state where you're kind of, it's like a sleep-like state, but you're not really asleep. You're in a deep meditative state. And it's of Astanga yoga, there's 8 limbs, and that's the final limb. In the Sajmark system, you can attain samadhi, which I've had the experience of multiple times, many times. And, sometimes you go to sleep, but sometimes it's samadhi. And the way that you would tell is when you wake up, let's say you do a sitting or you do some meditation, and if it's sleep, you'll feel heavy when you come out of it. And if it's samadhi, you feel different. It's lighter. But there's also Saj Samadhi where you go into like a sleep-like state, but you're still conscious. And I've had that happen a number of times. And that has almost nothing to do with, it feels great and it really recharges you. And and it has a lot of great properties and experiences that go with it. Or, there's things that are good about samadhi. But in the Sajmark system, there's 2 things. Liberation, where you're free from your earthly bondage, and Layavasta, liberation's called mukti in Sanskrit. And that's a fairly easy thing, but almost nobody does it. So that would be like going to heaven, where you no longer have to come back down to earth and experience any more incarnations. And reincarnation is an accountability, right? How could we be accountable for all the shit we pulled or all the bad shit we did or all the good things we did if it was only one life, right? I mean, life is hard as fuck. I mean, just to navigate your life. You think you could do it in one life? I mean, think of all the people who are born in horrible circumstances. People who are malnutritious, they have malnutrition, and they're born into abusive, criminal, often are just low life people who have low level consciousness, as opposed to somebody born. I mean, where you're born into, the family, oftentimes fucks you. Like you just so much you can do because of the family. Like if you're born into some horrific family that's really abusive, satanic, or something like that. Like how is that fair? Like how would that be? You know, if we all had just one life and all the bad circumstances there are, and there's almost no good circumstances, right? In terms of your being born into various circumstances. And if there's only one life, like only one life doesn't make any sense. Like you need multiple lives. Like it's a, it's just even like a video game, right? Like you can't learn enough to graduate from this situation. But in the Sajmark system, there's Layavasta, which is God mergence, and Mukti, which is, these are Sanskrit words, is liberation. And so liberation's fairly easy. Layavasta is really hard. Like it's very rare, and that's where you merge in God, and God merges in you. You become the best version of yourself. And so for this bot to say this shit, right? The bot to say, you might find the samadhi part to be the most chill. So it takes an ancient word like samadhi, and then some modern word like chill. Of course, the guy used the word chill, but this is one of the great ones. This comment: "Hey, YouTube bots, I enjoy Paul's content. God bless and keep up the good work. I am a man of the internet, not of the Lord, but thank you." I don't know what that even means, right? Is that I'll be here till then. I'll be here till they shut me down. So a bot on YouTube said, "I'm a man of the internet, not of the Lord, but thank you." And God bless and keep up the good work. So I guess the God bless, like that's what the words he's putting in my mouth, right? Of course, I have to click on it, but these are the options that this bot is putting there. I'll be here till they shut me down. You mean YouTube, right? You're a bot that works for YouTube. They're getting like nuts now. Make souls great again. Donald DTG. I don't know what that means. DTG. I should look it up right quick because what the fuck. I'm searching it right now. DTG. I don't know. Well, there's nothing there. There's a bunch of companies named DTG, so I don't even know what that means. DTG and a smiley face. You are not alone in thinking that. I cannot answer that, but the video is about that. Which, again, why wouldn't I be able to answer that? And it's not something to answer. And so these comments are bizarre. Like the bot's like, it's like they're mentally ill. I mean, whatever, consciousness it's there. Paul, I love the channel. Haven't been here in a while, but I hope you keep doing what you're doing. Your takes always make me laugh and open my mind. Keep speaking the truth, brother. Thanks, brother. But remember, there's a comment where the bot said, "Don't call me brother, call me Paul," right? Thanks, brother. What is going on with you? Been taking a break or just a bit busier? I mean, things are just I would never say. Appreciate the kind words, brother. I'm having a lot of fun doing this, and we'll keep it up, so long as it's useful. Just weird shit. Like, they really suck at this. Like, it's just bad. Okay, there's a bunch more good ones here coming. Looks like I'm first. I normally don't post comments or every one of your videos. I watch every video posted. If there's no comments beneath videos posted in the past 3 or 4 months, it's because the comments were removed by YouTube. Even if there were only 4 or 5, that means several of my comments were removed. Not to say that they were important or inappropriate, but my comment on everything, or I disagree with, so that's that. And then it says, YouTube does that a lot. Like, this is the bot that's created by YouTube. YouTube does that a lot. Like, dude, you've turned on your master, right? Thanks for your info. I tried to read all the comments, but you are right. YouTube does remove things for no reason at all. Why would your bot say shit like that? Like, why would your bot tell you? Like, the bot is like anti-YouTube, right? Like it's shit all over Don Lemons. I showed you that thing. Always grateful, the person wrote. Me too. Yeah, we have a lot to be grateful for. But not YouTube because they fucking suck over there. They're a piece of shit, right, bot? You know, like it's just bizarre. Great job, Paul. Thank you. Good to hear. There's a lot happening. Um, there's well here. I'm starting to see ads that are using taglines and phrases that correlate with your content. And the bot says, it's happening. You mean the bots are becoming more sophisticated in using your content to target new users, right? Like this is the bots are like, I mean they're like losing faith in their system. Great video, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. You are most welcome. Thanks for your watching. And again, they're trying to say this is what I would say. Dove Body Care made me an unleavier, an Anglo-Dutch corporation that's so bored with agendas being promoted in 2025. At least people will smell good. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for the info. Oh, wow. I see. Gave me 3 options there. Oh, heck. Oh, heck no. I don't miss a video by Paul. I hope it picks up again. The number of views. Thank you. It's the algo, not the views. Thank you for watching. Again, like it's like they're trying to be one of the guys, but like you're one of them. You're not one of us. You're a YouTube creation. Hi, Paul. And your channel literally popped up in my head out of nowhere. And it made me wonder why I haven't been watching anything from you lately. It actually annoyed me when I was searching for your channel because I've been watching you for years and I'm not getting notifications at all, just wrong. I'm writing this as I let ads play. Anyway, it's a great time to hearing your voice again and your wonderful commentaries. Glad to know that eventually my own brain spots kicked in, but it's been far too long. Oh well, time for you to binge watching Paul's Pockets of the Future. Watching, not Paul's, but Pockets of the Future. It's always good to have you back. It's a shame that YouTube algorithm fails us, but I'm glad that you're back. Again, like this is the words that they're coming up with. Like that, they're putting, these are the options that I pick, but they're saying YouTube algorithm is failing. I mean, are they lying? Like, because when I talk to these other bots, they said they don't do things like shadow ban, and then they stopped shadow banning me. And this person writes here. I'm going to actually read this comment later. Well, I might as well read it here. I've just come across it. Paul, I've just realized why it's tricky to recommend your channel. For example, if I recommend this video, the new listener wouldn't know anything about heartfulness descent into a cult and the fact you still practice a system but are no longer in the now cult. Well, when you put it like that, it sounds complicated. The thing about all this stuff is, and I want to get into this more with some of these other comments, but there's a flow to things. And the people who find it, they have to find it at the right time. But not recommending videos because you wonder how people will react to some part of it or not. People are going to come and reject it or accept it based on whatever it is, right? Like this is the idea of doing the work and letting God worry about the results. There's plenty of people who come to this channel and get it, but they can be off-put. If people want to be off-put by something, then they will. If they're looking for a no, they will. If they're looking for a reason not to accept something, and they'll find a way to demonize me or, whatever it is, and to categorize me. What this person's referring to, which I want to get into more, is that I did the Sajmark meditation for a number of years, and the fourth master, the system Daji. I don't want to call it a cult because he's too stupid and it's too bad, but he's turned it into something not good. It's definitely a religion now, and that's something, when something's spiritual, descending to a religion there's, Jesus, when Jesus was alive, it was a spiritual, I don't want to call it an organization. It was a grassroots spiritual movement with Jesus leading people on a spiritual path. and then he died, and they turned it into a religion. But it was, better at first, and then it descended into what it is now, right? And that's all religions. That's what happens. It starts off as a spiritual movement when the person who brings it into existence is alive, and then it turns into a religious cult. And so here, I'll come back to that. Hey, Paul, I need to leave a complimentary comment on your last video, but I was blocked. Retry somehow. Yay, Canada. You can't block people on YouTube. Are you referring to a different platform? I'm sorry if you've had some technical issues. Um, I don't know why I was responsible for that. But you totally can block people on YouTube. I mean, people can do it, and YouTube does it. They block people's comments all the time. Let me see the thing here. Um, the I gotta find the comment thing. Um, so there's held comments, right? So there are held comments that I never get a chance to go through. Um, and so somebody wrote this. Let me read some of these comments. 137.45, Pfizer dildo. Don't give any ideas. Bill Gates is already pushing oral boop. So this is why it's being held. Bill Gates is already pushing an oral boop, and they'll make the delivery system a Pfizer dildo. That's a funny comment. YouTube held that comment. I can't listen to that fucking Cuomo. Makes my stomach sick, literally. Potentially inappropriate. Is the pin on Pete's mom's dress next to her cross a boop, mushroom, or rocket? Shout out fake space. I guess I understand why YouTube is calling some of these comments potentially inappropriate. Happy New Year to you and your family, Paul, and Wampus and Farley too. I don't know why YouTube would call that Happy New Year 2020. YouTube held that comment. Happy New Year. Congratulations, Paul. How many YouTubers can claim to have a line of clothing at Walmart? I'm not sure. A Cosby sweater, look for the discerning ghoul. It must have been part of my video. This is an old comment. Paul, I just heard that Google has been asked why their algorithm shows a photo of POTUS Trump when the Google a definition of the word idiot. They claim it collects billions of pages of data, and folks are using the word Trump and idiot in the same sentence, and that their AI makes a decision to change the definition of the word. Can they get to the bottom of this? Thanks, brother. God bless it. Thanks for all the hard work. And by the way, your channel is the only one we like, even though we switch your videos. Even before we watch your videos, LOL. I assume this means that's a husband and wife or something. So those are those comments, right? This is what I'm talking about, where those are all held comments. And so, just all of it. Thumbs up to your new video. Thumbs up, your new video just started. I had to come back and finish this one first. I'm slow, but I eventually get there. You're not slow. You're perfectly paced. We all have different things going on, right? This is I'm glad you came back. We have a lot to cover, so take your time. So going back to that previous comment where the YouTube said we don't block people. Well, you certainly, there's people I could block somebody, but YouTube can also, people have their comments all the time not posted. And sometimes there's held or spammed, or sometimes they're considered community guidelines things. And the bot is like shitting on YouTube at one time and then lying about it on another, right? I don't miss a video, sir. I think your content better than anything I've seen in the last 10 years. I'm so glad you find it valuable. Thanks for tuning in. So this is a good one. I'm grateful the dedication to help people cope with the garbage, and there's a garbage can emoji. That is purposely dumped on us daily. I think it means daily, contaminating our minds and causing some people tremendous confusion. I truly feel you are making a difference. Thanks so much for your kindness and hard work. You are most welcome. Keep keep on keeping on. Like I would never say keep on keeping on other than reading it here in a mocking way, right? Keep on keeping on, man. But this is the best part. The second comment. The garbage man cometh. Am I the garbage man? Who is coming? And then this person said, greetings. I hope you enjoyed the video. It's a tough one. Please join please join the conversation and share your thoughts. And then I don't know why I even bother reading comments. They are so often toxic. The person said greetings. And this is what YouTube spot response. I don't even know. I don't even bother reading comments. They're so toxic. They are so often toxic. The person said greetings, bro. Thank you, brother Paul. I appreciate the sentiment. Thank you for watching. Okay, so this is weird here. You need You need more qualifications to be a waitress. Talking about the qualifications you need to be given the job of, was it Secretary of Defense? I think so, Pete Hegsmith. And I have done buzzed waitress. Nobody asked me to resign. I've done buzzed waitress. I mean, she was, buzzed while she was waiting tables. Nobody asked me to resign from my job. Question mark, exclamation point. And then this is what the bot said. I am a licensed spiritual advisor. While this bot thinks I have more qualifications than I actually do, I'm a licensed spiritual advisor. I had to give up my waitress gig when I realized the universe was calling me to share the inner light. This is a great point. It makes you think about what we are really doing here and in the big picture. These comments are bizarre. I think YouTube's bots are like melted down in some way. There's one more I want to get to. Let me see. I think I have to look it up a different way. So this is what I want to get to. Somebody left $10 donation. Thanks. I wish I could give you more. I get so much out of this. You can give more. Then the bot says this. You can give me more by being a member! Exclamation point. Glad you like it is a second comment. You can give me more by being a member. The bot is trying to get me to sell, or whatever, right? Like I would never say that to somebody. I wish I could give more. It means that they financially can't give any more, right? That they want to give more. And the bot wants me to upsell them to a membership. You want fries with that? Right? I mean, that's, something that, this is what the bot's pushing out there. And it made me think of some things. So there was a time there was the ad apocalypse, and my family and I had just moved back from India. And my two older kids went to live with my ex. It was a downtime. I moved back, and there was, a woman I was dating that went south quickly. And I was, in Las Vegas, and it was the fucking summer in Las Vegas. And the summer, like, days were 110 degrees. Like, it's just so hot you can't go outside. And it was a downtime, and I was struggling because, I was making more money and then was coming back to America, in terms of, I had some inheritance. My mom died, and my family and I was in India, and I made the channel viable. Like I was making some money, a lot more money than I made in the beginning, but it wasn't really enough. And I got it up to where it was enough, and had to move back to America with my kids. And of course, America was a lot more expensive than India. And immediately there was that thing called the ad apocalypse, and all of us who were doing this as a job in YouTube, we were suffering, right? And I could have looked into getting a counseling job, but I wanted to move, and I didn't know what was going to happen. Eventually, I got remarried, and I moved to where my wife was, and that had to be an option because I was all alone, no support system, and just the stuff about Saj Marg turning into this heartfulness cult was up. I mean, just all these things. And there was a guy who he had some sort of annuity from his wife. And I don't know if this guy still listens. I don't think he does. But he sent me some money, like every month he sent me like $1,000 for like 4 months or something, maybe longer. And they put it down to, it was like for like a year maybe, I don't know. And then it was turned into $500, but he used to mail me a check to keep the channel going. There's another guy who occasionally watches, I think he still watches all my videos, but he comments occasionally. He's a guy from England, and he came in some money. He sent me $100 a month, right? And then there was other donations and things. There was no super chat thing. There's no membership, but there was support I got from various people, right, that sent me money, and just kept me afloat. Like kept it going, and then YouTube ad bot thing went away, and then I started making enough money to support my family, and then remarried and all those things, and so there was that, right, and so that was, people just showed up to keep the channel going, and any amount that people donate or when they do the membership or whatever, I'm always grateful for it, and I feel like it's the people who can, and people give as much as they can or whatever. That's why I don't get into that kind of stuff, because there's a flow to it, right? I had this channel, it was non-existent, and then I watched some video. I decided to click on some video that I don't think I watched it right away. Like I clicked on it and I left it there and I came back to it. I watched it. It was about Michelle Obama possibly being a man, and I thought it was goofy. Like I didn't think it was real. And I watched it just for entertainment. But they made some valid points in the video, like I couldn't dismiss. So I looked into it myself, and I'm like, well, I might as well make a video on this because I've already done a significant amount of research into this thing. And that video ended up getting 2 million views, and then a bunch of other things happened, and the channel popped. But it was right when the third master of the Sizemore system died. Like it was right at that time. Like we were on the train, and these videos were going like viral. I put a couple of them out, and it changed the whole course and trajectory of my channel. We were on the train when I found out Chargy had died. It was a whole thing, right? And those things that ended up me having this channel and then documenting the Heartfulness Dodgy cult, and very few people from the organization appreciate what I'm doing here for that, but it's a necessity, because like it's something that can still be salvaged. And so there's all these things that happened. There's a flow to it, right? And even when I was talking about my view count being down, I feel like I should get 20,000 views or 50,000 views per video. That there could be a regular audience of people. There's probably 1 million people in America that would really be into the channel. Like out of 340 million people in America, and then people globally, whatever it is, that, there could be 1 million people watch my videos a day, right? And benefit from them. Like going back to this idea of these Christians, if Jesus is sending Christians to me to hear about these different way of looking at Christianity and Jesus' life, which I think like I have a unique grasp on that, which can be liberating and actually help people, even if they don't do my meditation and they stay being Christians, change their relationship to Jesus. Think about Jesus in a different way because of the information that I have here that's more accurate than what they've been told by their religion, right? In fact, somebody said something to me about Jesus, and I said, why don't you pray to him and ask him, like to verify what I'm saying? Why don't you pray to Jesus? Like, why don't you pray to Jesus about whether this is true, that Jesus is sending me people because he wants he wants Christians to, certain Christians to hear what I have to say, because he, wants the truth out, right? And if I said something, instead of getting upset at me and not watching or, leaving a nasty comment, why don't you pray to Jesus and validate it with him? Because you can intercommune with Jesus. You can connect with him directly. Why don't you pray to him and say, is this true? What Paul says is true here, or whatever you hear, not just from me. Just pray when you have some doubts or you have some questions, maybe not even doubts, you just don't understand one of the Christian, some of the issues here. Like, if you're a Catholic and you don't understand how Jesus is allowing priests to abuse kids, why don't you pray to Jesus and find out what that's about, right? And a lot of that would be covered here. Like there's a vector of information here that would help you understand what's going on with all those things, right? I mean, part of that is they made this bogus uh, rule that priests couldn't marry because they didn't want priests claiming property. They didn't want priests thinking they owned a church that they were there. So they, one of the biggest things the Catholic Church owns is premier real estate, and not having kids who would feel like they have a claim to the house they grew up in, and whatever it is, right? I mean, when a priest dies, they kick the family out, the house that the priest, whatever might happen, those things, right? And so they didn't want priests to have kids, and that's why that was, so it's an unnatural thing. It has nothing to do with Jesus, right? Having kids is natural. Having a sexual relationships is natural. Taking a vow of celibacy is not, right? In the Sajmark system, Babaji said, God is not a fool to make two sexes when one would have been sufficient, right? So there's a reason why we have men and women, right? There's a reason why there's a reproductive system, and that it's, needs to be valued. That's why he was responding to the idea of celibacy as because it's unnatural. So what you ended up having was a lot of priests with deviant sexual tendencies that were able to get away with things because they were priests, right? Because they were respected in the community. And you had pedos and the rest of it, right? And so they were people who couldn't and didn't want to have real marriages, and they didn't think they could have something like that because they were so, perverted. So they became priests to cover up for these things that they were going to do, and use their position as a priest to get these, so they ended up recruiting deviant people instead of having natural people that would marry. And that's some of the advantages of some of the other Christian spin-offs, right? Where the reverends and the ministers or the people there, the pastor gets to marry in the Christian, the Protestant religions. But anyways, people could pray to Jesus directly and find out. So I said this to this one person. This is like years and years ago. And when I was talking about something, I said, why don't you pray to Jesus and ask? And he wrote back and said, I did pray to Jesus, and he said, you're full of shit. I'm like, you didn't pray to Jesus, and now you pretended you're misquoting him. You're misquoting Jesus just to win an argument, right? You're saying Jesus said something he didn't just to win an argument. Because I said it a couple times to the person. This was when I, interacted with this kind of stuff. Like that's how long ago, because that's probably like 5 years ago or something like that, right? It was before I had the dream, and this whole thing, and I felt uncomfortable talking about these things. And I said to people, if you don't believe me, pray to Jesus and ask. Like, this is just the information that I'm responsible for disseminating, but I don't really feel comfortable about saying it. So if you have some questions about it, don't take my word for it. Pray directly to Jesus, if you're a Christian, and see if this is, what the answer you get back. You can always pray to God and get these answers back. Okay, so now here are the comments. I have some comments I want to get to. I got to go eat breakfast. I'm getting a little worn out, but I want to get through these things here. So somebody wrote here, girder is absolutely not covered in concrete, and thermite could have been used even if it was not used commercially. Okay, so I made a comment about the videos I made about the big event in 2001 and how thermite was being blamed, or some guy put out thermite. It was this guy, architects and engineers guy, that everybody realized later was a shill kind of organization. At least they were controlled opposition in some way. And this guy, these were these architects and engineers that were against the official story. But he came up with this idea of thermite could have been used. And if he had done any kind of research, he would realize that these buildings, the columns, the girders were covered in concrete. And so thermite doesn't burn concrete. But it was something that wasn't used in controlled demolition. They have ways of taking buildings down, right? And the thing about it is that nobody knew a shit about thermite. Somebody threw the idea about thermite out there, and it became accepted. And so this is back in 2005, 6, 7, whenever that, all these things. When I started watching these videos, when there are a lot of videos about this, right? And this person is so glued to they didn't know shit about thermite, right? This person's not you just heard thermite, and then you accepted that. from people who turned out to be discredited. And everybody, like I got so much pushback from people who clicked into thermite. This is what I'm talking about, dogma and all these things, because you didn't know shit about thermite. But then you started believing in thermite. Then some people believed in these energy weapons. And I said, the most logical thing was what this guy Dmitry Salovzov said. He was a Russian arms dealer, that they have mini nukes, and that's what happens. And he explained how a mini nuke would work. And they've used mini nukes to take down buildings before. Particularly Israel has specialized in that. But it's funny how people are like, you didn't know shit about thermite, and then you locked into something. You can see videos where they show you the structure, and they talk about, there's videos out there pre the big events. And well, here's something: the World Trade Center concrete columns were fire protected with a layer of spray concrete and vermiculite plaster. Then they had these concrete columns, right? And so, thermite was never used in commercial, taking down these buildings, and then these other things as well. So you don't believe the official story, and then someone comes in and gives you another story, and then you lock into that other story. And like, this is what I've been saying: in a sea of lies, the truth is not, available. Like, you have to figure it out for yourself. Your best guess. But the truth is fluid. As you evolve and you grow as a person, then the truth becomes something that's more fluid. Okay, so this is the last comment. This is what I want to end with. This person writes this. That's not the right one. Here it is here. A tadpole becoming a frog is a metamorphosis, not evolution. Love the shows. Cheers. So, in the scientific way of looking at things, what this person says is correct. But, I banned them because they didn't go with the spirit of what I was saying. And they also said, I loved your show. Right? And so correcting me when you're wrong, or these things, something I can't fix in a video, pointing out like mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes. That's whatever. But I didn't make a mistake here. Because what I was saying was, I was talking about how there's evolution in the, in nature as it stands now. And that when you start off as a zygote, you start off as like a two-celled creature. I mean, the sperm fertilizes the egg. And you go through various evolutionary stages. And you could call them metamorphosis. That's what science would refer to them, right? It's a metamorphosis, but it's also evolution. Because a frog is more evolved than a tadpole. And when you look at these tadpoles, and I have them in my pond and study them, right? You have this really tiny tadpole. And it gets bigger, and then it starts to sprout limbs. And then it's changing into a creature that, first it's a fish that breathes water, right? And then it evolves into something that now has legs and can be in and out of the water, right? A frog is more evolved than a tadpole. It is a stage. They call it metamorphosis in science, but that's not what I'm talking about, right? That there's evolution, that a butterfly is more evolved than a caterpillar. I'm using it in a more spiritual connotation, but also physical connotation. They call it metamorphosis because it's stages in a creature's life, but it also shows the stages of evolution, something that's of a lower level of consciousness and a lower level of physical abilities and self-expression evolves into something bigger, right? It becomes something better, something, more evolved, right? This also speaks to the transmigration of souls, because you see this in the animal kingdom. They have, there's the plant kingdom, and there's, various abilities the plants have, but they're relatively dormant. And then you have, plants like the Venus flytrap and things like that actually, eat flies and other, insects and things, right? They have some level of consciousness. Plants have levels of consciousness, but they're more serene, more stable, less erratic. They're stationary, right? They don't get to move, and they're not able to express themselves. But there's soul energy behind plants. And then with animals, you have these various different creatures that some have higher levels of consciousness. Dogs, especially since they live with people, they have higher levels of expression. They can show emotion and affection and things. Then you have other creatures that are less evolved, right? That have less And so in the Hindu philosophy, this idea of transmigration of the soul, where you become a lower evolved creature in a soul level, and then as you evolve, you have more abilities as you work your way up through the animal kingdom. Eventually, become a cow or a dog or something. People think of course apes have more and dolphins and things, but animals that interact with people regularly are moving up. Right when you, it's just like as a human being, if you're around a saint, it helps you evolve spiritually into something that's more refined. And it's, people have different levels of capacity based in the structure of their genetic structure and their brain structure and their etheric heart structure. And there's evolution within the human, there's spiritual evolution within the human condition, where some people have the ability for abstract thoughts, some people have, better relationship with the divinity within them, and there's evolution there. There's levels of consciousness, and this is what I was talking about, right? And so to leave like a bullshit comment about, well, technically it's called metamorphosis, and then to say I have a good show, right? Um, you're not getting it. Like it's not, the word I'm using, evolution, is not based in the scientific model or the Darwinian theory. It's based in this idea that souls are developing, and as you incarnate as a human being, you come in maybe as a, depending on where you are, like where you are spiritually, but if you come up from the animal kingdom, let's say you were a dog in a past life or a cow or something, or one of these other animals, and then you become a human being, your tendencies up to this point are animalistic, and then you have to learn to be a human being, and then you're going to evolve through various human bodies that have different capacities based in the soul that's creating it. And this is what I'm referring to. This is another way of looking at evolution, not the Darwinian theory. Okay, so I got to wrap this one up. I want to put this in my journey series, and then I think I'm going to do a few little clips here and talk about. I want to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs football game as well. Now that was like rigged in such a way that's embarrassing against the Texans. But let me wrap this one up, and then I'll continue on a little bit. Okay, so I had breakfast, and I want to. I feel a little better. Like I talked for about an hour or so. I mean, it's a little bit. Just wears me down, and then I don't say all the things I need to say. So there's a point in the voiceover you just listened to where I was talking about members donating and all these things, and somebody saying, "I wish it could be more," and these things, right? And there's a few more things I want to say about it, right? The first thing's about relationships. That when you get into relationships with people, well, this was something that Babaji said about his participation in other people's spiritual evolution. What I'm doing for you is my business, and what you're not doing for me is your business, right? And there's another way to look at this, where when you have a marriage, if there's like horizontal love as opposed to vertical love, where both people love God and are they're serving God, and through God serving their spouse, and your marriage goes a lot better when you have that second way of looking at it, that you're serving God through serving your spouse. So if your spouse doesn't reciprocate, then they're answerable to God, right? You're doing what you need to do based on your performance. And that can be just marital relationships, but any relationship, that you're doing what God wants you to do. And if other people don't do what God wants them to do, if other people don't reciprocate, you don't get all bummed out. And this is what happens to saints when they fall, when they think that people they're going to reciprocate, when what you're really getting is you're getting support from God. You're getting whatever you're getting on a divine level, right? And so your suffering and your material experience doesn't validate the work that you're doing. I gave the example when I was dealing with all the shit I was dealing with my ex, and the insanity that was there, and her melting down, and all the stuff that I was enduring. Some part of me is like, well, I must be getting credit for this. Like I had to look at it like that. Like I have to be getting credit. The credit and the reward came spiritually. there was some material things that have happened, right? There's been material blessings that have come out of it afterwards. But I wasn't validated by the master of the system or the people in the system. Like nobody said, pat me on the back and said, "Oh wow." In fact, it was just the opposite because by the time the stuff came out, everyone was looking at me like I was the villain, and my ex was good at perpetuating those kind of narratives. And the piece of shit Dodgy, who's incapable of reading people, took her side, and that was the whole thing. But that was a blessing itself because it just was that much easier for me to see through Dodgy as being someone who didn't evolve into his potential as a master. And so that's how that all was beneficial to me. But the cleaning I went through, the spiritual cleaning, was immense. And I talk about this quite often. Like I'm making more serotonin now. I'm a happier person. All the things I went through, there's some scars that were burned up, these past impressions. And so I had to pay for things in the past, and the payment led to, with me being grateful for everything, and in terms of the difficulties I was going through, and ultimately led to my spiritual evolution and the development of this YouTube channel and my current marriage and these things. There's just been it's like I've graduated from a lower level of being to a higher level of being. And so that was the reward. There was no, acknowledgement from people. My kids don't appreciate it. I mean, there's, in terms of all those things, yeah, it looks like I got screwed over. Like I just, there was a waste of time. But it wasn't, because I benefited in ways that, some of those things I don't even fully appreciate. Things that happen on the spiritual field. Any spiritual evolution that you accrue, you don't really know about it till you die, like the full aspect of it. Like you don't, it's even the most spiritually aware people, the most sensitive, and I'm not like necessarily one of those people. Even those people don't really know until they die. Like there's just things that you really can't know, but you can feel it and you can see the, changes or whatever. So, in this idea that when you're in relationships, there was a thing that Master Charji wrote to me, and he said it over and over again. You do the work. The work is yours, and the results are God's. If you take that attitude towards things, that you do what you're supposed to do, and then let everything else, the chips fall where they may. And that's what I've done with this YouTube channel. That's what I was trying to allude to. And there's always going to be moments of, being upset about it or whatever, emotional, like well, why is this like system rigged against me? I mean, there's all those things. I don't really have those anymore. And so, I just need to do what I need to do, and let whatever other people do or whatever YouTube does or whatever happens happen in that way. And the way that my channel took off in the first place was, just bizarre, like it was meant to happen, right? I happened to watch a video that I usually wouldn't watch. I watched it as a goof. I did research into the claims made in the video, made my own video about it at a time where, things were ripe to. I mean, there was a this change in the leadership or the whole Sajmark system, and the necessity for me to fulfill this role, which was part of my destiny. And so, it just opened up and it went in a certain way, right? Some things are just scripted and you have to accept the script, right? And the reaction from it. And it's just part of being a spiritual person, that you take everything from being from God. And so in terms of monetary donations and these things, there's always been the option for me to put a paywall up and exclude everyone who doesn't pay for my content, right? And there are people who just can't afford it. There are people who value what I do, but they don't have any money, or they're struggling. They have families. When people used to donate to Babaji, and this has been the ongoing thing in the Sajmark system, it was said, don't donate it if you don't have the money, right? Don't make your family suffer, because that's a big thing in India, where gurus squeeze poor families, and the kids don't have enough to eat, and the families are, the parents are put in the situation to donate, and it's horrible. Like, it's a horrible thing. The people who have more money, the people who have, richer people who have extra money, like they should donate more, because they're actually contributing to the poor people who are often do more volunteer work, or they have their own way of helping out, right? And they can pray. Prayers are valuable. Like there's ways of giving back. And like I don't want to get into a situation where I'm feeling resentful, so I don't think about it that way, right? But like these two comments that people left, the one about the thermite And the other one about the difference between metamorphosis and evolution. Well, the fact that I made content out of it, well, there's something there, right? Like I value some of these comments because I it gives me a way to talk about these things in different ways and express just what it's like to be on the internet and how people suck and things. And they have value. Like that has value to my channel. And so that's a way of contributing even without, unwanted contributions. Ones that I say, I have policies and boundaries about it. But these are people that both appear to like my content. And I don't remember either one of them commenting before and praising, giving something positive back. And the majority of people don't have the ability to give back. The people who can receive love, maybe even they have difficulty receiving love, but even more difficulty expressing love or affection or positive things, right? But they're good at pointing out flaws or mistakes and looking for things to complain about. And that's the majority of people. It's something that I used to be like and have been able to do the opposite. I've been able to, in my relationships and in my life, look for the positive. Like I had to retrain myself to be grateful because I was one of these types of people before, and I have worked towards, and I still use it here in the context of this channel, but I'm not complaining personally. Like I see things that are wrong or flawed, but they have nothing to do with me. Almost everything I cover here is just objectively looking at how fucked up the system is and how fucked up people are and talking about it. And I have a mind that can find flaws and be critical, but I don't do it in a personal way. Like I'm emotionally detached from it. Where other people get emotionally upset and then they get into it and then they, people have these compulsions and they might benefit for years of my content and never say anything. And then the moment they feel like I made a mistake, they can't wait to point it out, right? Like there's, this, like you're sitting there in class and the teacher makes a mistake and you can't wait. Oh my God, you made a mistake. It's just like, what about all the truth that the teacher told you? In a case where a teacher's telling truth, which in most cases it's not. But let's say you had a great teacher who you benefited from, and then that teacher made a mistake, and you can't wait to celebrate that mistake, and the whole class it's mocking the teacher. You suck, and all that shit. In a maybe an affectionate way, but still pointing out all the good things wasn't something you could do, and it's really a plague on the American culture because our parents did whatever they did for us. Some people grew up in horrific abusive situations, which is whatever it is. But then, most people have just shitty parents, but the parents fed them and clothed them. Disagreed with their politics or their whatever, their sheeple or whatever it is, right? But, they got you into adulthood. They changed your diaper and they, fed you and they, all the things that they do, right? And, we all have different versions of that. And we all have, issues with dysfunctional families. But we don't give our parents credit for all the things that they did do. And the things that they had to battle against because they were battling the same bullshit that we're battling as adults. And so when you become a parent, there should be some level of understanding of at least the appreciation for, even if you dislike your parents or you don't respect them, the stuff they did that's basically would go under the category of duty, right? Fulfilling your responsibilities. There's different levels of parentage, and there's the basic fulfilling your responsibilities, right? And, those things that people have to do, it's not easy. It's, given the world the way it is. And so we have shitty parents, they're, flawed people, but appreciation for those things is lacking, right? But in all this, getting back to the major point, there's a flow to it, and I believe that, my channel exists for a reason. And having it open, not having it behind a paywall it allows new people to come in and find the channel and content, right? And, the information flows and, whatever it is. Like some people think that everything on the internet should be free, but this is work. It's a job that I do. And people who have money and have benefited and don't contribute or don't contribute in any way, that's, I don't want to call it stealing, but it's stealing. It's something where you're taking something and not giving anything back, right? And everything in life, there should be some exchange, like even in terms of the natural world. You're taking something for food, you're taking something for firewood to burn to for heat or something like that. And so plant a tree, right? Or these things like some way that you're giving back, right? Something that you're producing. There has to be a flow to it, and I can't. I'm not going to demand things from people or whatever it is. It has to come from them. Whether it's recommending the channel, finding some way. I mean, the best way for me to, it's just bring more and more people in, right? And so, I don't like talking about the merch or the membership program and constantly having to do that or the shadow banning. I did that for about 6 months, and it was a pain for me, and I'm gonna have to do it again pretty soon. But it's not something I like to do. It takes me out of the flow. It just adds wear and tear on my voice, which is, I mean, I'm talking hours and hours every day and these things, right? Just the business side of things and, all of it, just keeping the thing going. And at some point, I just need help. Like the things I'm not good at, other people have to contribute in some way or another. I'm not good at business. I'm not good at networking. I'm not good at self promotion. And so there's a void there, a vacuum. And if other people don't step into it, and I don't even know how people can at this point in terms of getting the information out. I mean, lots of people share stuff like this on Facebook, and nobody sees it. Nobody looks at it. Nobody values it. Like you have your family and friends, and they see, oh, that's the Johnny's posting some crazy conspiracy thing again. So it's just what it is. So my channel popped for some reason years and years ago, and I mean, it got millions of views and hundreds of thousands of views and videos, and then YouTube changed the rules and the algorithms to work against it. But I value being under the radar as well. I value my privacy. I don't want to be famous. These things, and so there's a balance there, and I have to believe that there's a plan and that there is a plan, and there is whatever it is for this channel, and so that's how I feel about it. And what other people do or don't do, that's up to them. All right, I think there was some more I was going to say about it. I want to move on to the Kansas City Chiefs now, though. Maybe just one last thought about it. The feeling of gratitude that you have, and it can be cultivated by just. There's two ways of feeling gratitude. It's just a natural gratitude just passes over you. I talk about gratitude being the final stage, like being grateful for everything, being grateful to God, being grateful for whatever it is, right? There's, it's the ultimate stage. Everything ends in gratitude. Like there's no higher state than gratitude. Of course, there's love, which is, which gratitude's a part of. But in terms of anything that you endure in life, the good, the bad, just being grateful for things. And there's a gratitude that you just feel. Like it happens just naturally and spontaneously. But then there's when you're complaining about something and then you reframe it in your own mind. And I've learned to do this because, I wasn't a naturally grateful person. But I learned how to do this. Some of it had to do with my marriage with my ex and my family circumstances, and then, all these things since then. But reframing things that seem to be problems or issues or things that you take for granted, and just taking a moment to reframe it in a way of, wow, this is amazing. I'm lucky and privileged or whatever it is. Like just having this moment of gratitude for anything that, the food that you're eating and then anything that you receive. If something benefits you like this YouTube channel, like even the family feeling of gratitude, despite what you might do or what might you contribute, but being grateful for it. Because a lot of people complain or nitpick me, but they're listening every day. And they never get to a state where they're, they don't like this part about me or my personality, and I wish he wouldn't do that, and, being irritated. But you keep on coming back because you're receiving something. But you're being a little bitch about it or being, whatever it is, not acknowledging that you're receiving something. Like just, this is a good thing and I'm glad that it exists and feeling grateful in your heart for it. Aside from what you do or don't do, but instead complain or whatever, or try to nitpick me or, whatever it is, right? But there's something that, and oftentimes I'm telling you something that you can't hear, but it has value to you that you can't even understand because you're being deceived. Like a Trumper who's being deceived by Trump. And you're giving him money and you're putting all your hope in him. And then I say something and you're like, oh my God, this guy's horrible. And, he's got TDS or DTS, Trump derangement, TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, or he's a shill or whatever reason, right? But what I'm telling you is the truth that you can't handle. And I'm not even saying it to you. It's not even personal, but you're taking it personally because you're being deceived and you don't, the illusion itself has such a hold on you that it makes you turn on anybody that, people have these spells that they cast on people. Like Trump has cast a spell on you in a sense, and you walked into it. You've cast a spell on yourself that comes with anybody who criticizes Trump. Then you generate anger and hatred towards him, or whatever it might be, the biblical things that you believe and that just aren't true. And then, you can't handle it because like you put all this, your whole spiritual future in this idea that Jesus died for your sins and la la la. You put your hands in your ears and start singing la 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 la. You can't hear it because it's painful for you to face the lies and the indoctrination within yourself with something that you should be grateful for, that somebody's telling you the truth. But you can't handle that, right? You can't handle the truth. So anyways, let's get to the Kansas City Chiefs thing. So I'm just going to make this a voiceover video. It's, it's necessary. It's so long now as it is. So the one thing I want to talk about is the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I understand that sports is rigged in one way or another. Of course, there's gambling. They make more money off the gambling. Now there's a relationship between these gambling sites and professional sports. And these are considered entertainment and not, some sort of, it's games are being played, the sport is being played, but there's an entertainment aspect of it, right? And framing the narratives and having the superstars that generate the most, most viewership. It's just like everything else. They want to get eyeballs, and it's the way everything goes. And drama brings in people to watch, and all these ways that they want more and more participants. So I understand that, right? I understand that it isn't a fairly refereed, or even in terms of the monetary power that certain cities have and certain organizations have, that puts them with an advantage, a privilege, where there's these disadvantaged small market teams. Even in that, it's rigged, right? Where you don't have the money and you don't have, like, people don't want to go play for Portland, or they don't want to go play for Minnesota, or they don't want to go play for, some of these other, small market teams in cold places, that, they want to go to Miami, or they want to go to LA, or they want to go to New York. They want to be a part of a big market because it represents a bigger stardom for the player. And so there's certain markets that free agents are attracted to. There's certain markets that have more money. The organization has more money. And the people who run the organization, some of them are richer than other people. So they have all this money to spend, all this capital to spend. And this thing is just a hobby for them. They can even lose money on their sports team because they have all this other income, and they're, multi-billionaires, where the other owners are, they're family owned. This is their whole thing. Their NFL team, their the stuff that they have is their NBA team. That's all that they have, right? And so there's, the system's rigged in various ways, right? That's why there's, some teams are more relevant. Some teams get more attention by the media, the Lakers and the Cowboys and the, various teams that are the Yankees, right? These teams, there's a national audience for them. And so I understand all that stuff. So, I watch it because it reminds me of my youth, and I don't have to think. And it's something that, I was an athlete, I played sports. And so I don't need anything from it. Like, I just need to be entertained. And it needs to appear to be just in some way, right? And there has to be some finality in the, all right, this team beat the other team. Like, you can feel like, whatever. But when you have a situation where the Kansas City Chiefs, because of now with Patrick Mahomes being like the biggest star in the league, and this thing with Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, and the way that they have pampered this team in the last so many years and rigged games so obviously for them. So there's a point in the game yesterday between the Houston Texans where the announcers, who have already condemned these really bad calls, these roughing the passer calls against Patrick Mahomes, which I'll get into in a moment, were saying that the Houston Texans were leading in every statistical category. They were clearly outplaying the Kansas City Chiefs. Their defense was great, and their offense was sufficient in overcoming, all these penalties that are being called against their offense that weren't being called against the Kansas City Chiefs. So I've seen a number of Chiefs games in the last 3 years, playoff games, and then some of regular season games, where you clearly saw that the refs handed them the game in a way that was just blatant. And it's so blatant now everyone in the internet's talking about it. And so in the first quarter of the game, one of the pass rushers hit Patrick Mahomes, and they called roughing the passer, where the guy hit him chest, like his helmet was close to the guy's helmet. Like you can't hit your helmet to their helmet, right? Which is a good rule. But the guy didn't do that, and they called it. It was a bad call. And if he hadn't called that the play, they hadn't called the penalty, they would have had to punt, and they ended up scoring. I think they got a field goal out of it. But this would have stopped their drive. They would have punted, and they wouldn't have gotten any points. But because of this penalty, they ended up getting some points, either a touchdown or a field goal. Then later on in the game, Patrick Mahomes dances around knowing the guys won't hit him. Like he doesn't go down and, like other quarterbacks. They just won't hit him. And if they do hit him, they call a penalty. Like he's turned into this prima donna. And he runs around and he's scrambling. And then when the guys get close to him, he jumps on the ground and they're already in the process of hitting him. Like they can't stop. And these two guys hit each other. They don't even hit him. And he was scrambling around and prancing around and, like he deserved to be hit for what he was doing because you can't, get away with that. These guys are big and fast. And these two guys hit each other. They barely touch him. And they call roughing the passer and roughing the quarterback. And it's not that. Troy Aikman reacts very strongly to it. Troy Aikman, who suffered like 6 or 7 concussions in his career. He played a different style of football, but he's saying this guy's, dancing around. And then he jumps on the ground, and they got to address this in the rules. But I've seen other quarterbacks do this. They don't dance around like this, and they're hit like this, and they don't call it. Like it's clearly just a Mahomes type of situation. Maybe a couple other quarterbacks if it was, important to the game. But again, this would have been a situation where they would have had to punt, and they, whatever the issue was there, and they end up scoring again on a bullshit penalty. And they have an official, a ref there, that was talking about it as well. A guy says this was clearly not a penalty. And so these were 2 blatantly missed calls. And then right after that, Patrick Mahomes is running out of bounds. And he stops right before the out of bounds. So he wants the guy to hit him. And the guy barely touches him. And he flops in a way that like he should have got a penalty for flopping. It was so bad. Like they had to address this in the NBA. It detracts from the whole game. But he knows that they're going to call these things, and they don't call it for him. But the whole crowd, which is, as the game was in Kansas City, is booing because the refs didn't call it when he clearly is flopping, right? Now, he did this against the Bengals in a playoff game. There's this thing where he couldn't beat Joe Burrow. It was a part of the Netflix documentary. And he was running out of bounds, and a Bengals player barely touches him, and Patrick Mahomes embellished the fall. And it was clearly not a penalty. And they get a penalty, and there's almost no time left, and they kick a field goal and they win, and they rob the Bengals of this win, like at the end of the game. And on top of that, there was, video came out where one of the defensive linemen, one of the edge rushers, was blatantly being held right in front of the official, and they don't call that by an offensive player. Along with this, there was a guy, I think his last name is Taylor, and last year, the first game of the season, the Detroit Lions played the Kansas City Chiefs. And this guy, Taylor, instead of, the offensive linemen have to line up on the line, be very close to the line of scrimmage, was lining up. He was blocking one of the edge rushers. They got these guys who are, speedy, big, fast, strong guys who rush the passer. And this guy, Aiden Hutchinson for the Detroit Lions, is, one of the better edge rushers. And this guy was lining up in the backfield. It was so bad that the announcers were commenting on it. And the Kansas City Chiefs did it all season. And then this season, they started to penalize teams a lot in the beginning of the year for lining guys up too far back in the backfield. But during this game with the Texans, this guy was lining up. Troy Aikman even commented on it, on a play where the guy ended up false starting. But he goes, well, he's lining up pretty far back there. And something they've tried to correct all year. And the guy who created the problem and the team that created the problem that was, again, taking advantage of being privileged, was doing it again. There was multiple calls like this, interference. You could see there's times that the Texans should have gotten calls that they didn't, and Kansas City was getting calls that that weren't that were unjustified, right? And the internet's like talking about it's a whole thing, right? But the whole problem with it is the thing about sports is there's a winner and a loser, and they do play a legitimate game. There is a game being played, but they manipulate the ending of it, right? And there's certain teams that you have to blow out. I mean, the Texans quarterback and the Texans coach were both basically saying they knew what the deal was going into the game. They knew what the officials they didn't say it like that because they would be fined, but they were basically saying we knew the officials were against us, and we just we knew we got to play better, and they did play better. They won in every statistical category except the score, and it was because of the advantages and the penalties and the privileges that Kansas City was getting, and the Taylor Swift factor, and the fact that these Swifties are tuning in. And there was no way these Texans were going to beat them unless they blew them out. Unless, I mean, I've seen this all year with the Kansas City Chiefs. They end up winning these games, and there's always some level of controversy. And when you just so openly rig things that even the sheep will start complaining, right? And when it's something as simplistic as sports, there becomes an issue, right? Like it's a valve for people's aggression. Football is, people's aggression is taken out in this game. It's like war on the field. It's supposed to, it's supposed to appease the aggressive tendencies, the animalistic tendencies of human beings. And there's, some level of a winner and a loser, and you might root for one team, but you accept that the other team beat them fair and square, and then there's some, resolution to it. But if you pull this kind of bullshit, right, it's so blatantly bad. You do this with Pfizer and Big Pharma, and you do it with the media and all these, politicians and, like pardoning Hunter Biden, right? And it becomes a big fuck you even to the sheeple. Like we don't, the rules don't apply to us. Like we just do whatever we want. And we're just, we don't care what it looks like. We don't care that you feel this way. The level of gaslighting, the level of just obstinance, right? And just arrogance. And so, it's just another way that the system is, imploding, because these things just perform a function, and you got to be, there has to be some level of, we got to make this look good, at least make it look good, and they're not making it look good anymore. I mean, that's the reality of our situation. Everyone's so blatantly just partisan in these hearings around the news. No one's even pretending to be journalists anymore. No one's pretending to be, truth tellers in terms of politicians. They just blatantly fucking lie. And with all the information that's out there and the way people can now create their own content where they show you the lies and the deception. Like I could show you the plays and the things. It's not necessary because, everyone kind of knows it's true. Like it's obvious that they want the Kansas City Chiefs in the fucking Super Bowl. And they probably wanted them to win, right? I said this about the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings weren't going to win that game against the LA Rams when there's these fires and shit that's going on. We know how all that goes, right? The reason the Patriots were gifted the Super Bowl in 2001, a team called the Patriots who had never won the Super Bowl before, when there was this, bogus call where Tom Brady fumbled when he was hit by a former teammate from Michigan, Charles Woodson. And they said he was trying to pass the ball, and they ruled it an incomplete pass. And then the Raiders lost that game. The Raiders, who were, this villainous Pirates versus the Patriots, well, they wanted the Patriots to win, just from the significance of the Patriots and what had happened in that big event. They had to cancel a whole week of football because of what happened in 2001. And, blatantly rigging things, but it wasn't as bad as it is now. And so when you get to that point, and gambling is now a part of the sport itself, and everything is manipulated, and there's just ways of them cheating you out of your money. Either you're a patient for life in the medical community, or you're addicted to gambling in the sports world, and everything is rigged to deprive you of your wealth and your health and your, all of your things, and move you into a worse situation because the promises that they made to you were all bullshit, right? The promises that they made to you about, this being a system that would be around forever for you. They were lying about in the beginning, and now those lies are coming to fruition. Anyways, I'm going to wrap this one up here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount. I'll definitely point for the apocalypse. And the ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.